You're listening to Nurse Converse, presented by Nurse.org, a collaborative podcast amplifying diverse nurse voices. Get ready for a dose of inspiration, a sprinkle of education, and a whole lot of community.
Welcome back to Nurse Converse podcast. This is your host, Ellaine, also known as Nurse Who Invests. And today we're going to be talking about one of my most favorite things in the world to talk about, which is investing. And before we get started, I want to just let you guys know that Nurse.org is not a tax website. So all the information and everything we're going to be talking about for this episode is intended to be for general guidance only. So check with the IRS rules with qualified tax professionals to ensure that they apply to your personal circumstances. So today I want to really talk about investing, and this is a topic that always comes up whenever I talk about personal finance in my platform. And when people or nurses hear the word investing, they automatically think that it's very overwhelming. They don't know where to start. It's very confusing. And so I really want to talk about like some of the reasons why nurses don't invest in the first place. So first of all, when we talk about investing and people hear that word, especially if we're talking about stock market investing, a lot of people think that it's the same thing as gambling. So a lot of us who work hard for our money is scared to lose the money that we work so hard for, right? So when they hear the word stock market, they automatically don't want to do it because of that fear. Now, I want to let you know that investing, whether you are not investing, carries some sort of risk. And because of inflation or the increase of prices and goods that we consume every day, we are actually losing our money's value if we don't invest our money. Now, there are some ways that you can actually reduce the risk of losing money in the stock market. And that is really if you decide to invest for a long time and also if you diversify your investments. Now, speaking of, long-term investing, a lot of people also don't invest for the second reason, which a lot of times they think that retirement is far away. I know when I was a new grad nurse, I was looking at my paycheck that I pulled up back in 2013 when I've been working as a nurse for like the past 2, 3 years at that time. And I pulled up my paycheck and I was like, wow, not only am I underpaid, but at the same time, I was looking at my retirement contributions and I did not contribute anything. It was zero, nada. And I guess my mindset at that time was I am too young to be thinking about retirement. I am too young to be putting away money for the future. I just want to enjoy my money now. And I know that a lot of nurses have this mindset, especially when they're just graduating from nursing school. And because nursing school is so hard, we want to reward ourselves, we want to spend money for ourselves, which is something that I don't really, want to tell people to not do. But at the same time, you can invest and also splurge and treat yourself at the same time. Now, retirement, what most people think about retirement or investing is that it is an age and it's something that we have to think about when we're closing in that age, which is typically in the 60s. Right now, the average retirement age is 67. That's the retirement age in the USA. And if you are just starting out in your 20s, you're probably like, that is a long time to be thinking about, retirement. But the thing with investing is that the earlier you start, the better. And the reasoning for that is because of compound interest. And that really is money because of the interest that's made from the money that you've put in earlier. So it's interest on top of interest. And the earlier, the better because of that time horizon that you have with investing. So that is the second reason why a lot of nurses don't invest. And the third one is that a lot of nurses think that it's too complicated and overwhelming. And so What I want to talk with you about today is how you can get started with investing in a way that you and I can understand. Because I've been in your situation, I have been that nurse who did not want to do it because I was so confused, or I don't even know where to begin with in the first place. Now, I also would like to say that being a nurse is more complicated than investing, being both a nurse for over 13 years now and an investor for the past like 5, 6 years. Because I always say that investing is not common sense. It's not one of those things that you innately learn, and you need to learn it in order to be good at it. And I also mentioned this in one of my podcast episodes that investing is something that you have to keep on doing in order for you to be good at it. When we graduate as nurses, we automatically don't become an inexperienced and seasoned nurse, right? Like it takes years of honing our skills. It takes years of experience to actually be good at the craft that we do. And so it's the same thing with investing. Once you learn the basics, once you get started, which is the most important part, you get better at it and you get to really know yourself on what kind of investments you're able to tolerate, what kind of risks you're able to take, and what really are your goals when it comes to your investing journey. And so it's so important to get started with investing because of the things that I had just mentioned, which is, inflation, with your money losing its value over time. And then the second one is really the power of that compound interest. You have to start early for your money to keep on working for you. So, here are the steps that I'm going to do if I'm just starting out with investing. And if you're listening to this podcast and you haven't invested your money and you don't know where to start, this is perfect for you. So, number one is get educated. And I say this because a lot of people invest sometimes in things that they don't understand, and that is really where they lose the money. So, picking up a book about investing and reading a book about personal finance, listening to podcasts, following people that you trust and who's been in the field or in that space talking about money is one thing. And I myself started with picking up a book. I think one of the books that I read was Rich Dad Poor Dad. And this book was written by Robert Kiyosaki. It really talks about the difference of a poor dad and a rich dad, in where the poor people work for their money, whereas the rich people make their money work for them. Now, when it comes to investing, one of my favorite books is A Simple Path to Wealth. And also, I love Boglehead's Guide to Investing. And they're really teaching you a lot about long term investing and being very diligent in the investments that you make. So that's number one, is getting educated. You have to invest in things that you understand. Number two is you have to really know where you're starting. So I think that one of the most important things that you can do before you get started with investing is tracking your income and your expenses. And this means learning how to budget. It's so hard to really know where you're going if you don't know where you're starting, right? And so I think that tracking your income and your expenses is so important, because you have to figure out if there's even money to invest. And with that said, having that money to invest is essential to investing. And increasing your income could be one thing that you can do in order to do that. Number three is really setting up a good financial foundation. And Nurse.org has a really great article about this. It's called The Complete Guide to Personal Finances for Nurses. It talks about really just the basic foundation of personal finance. It talks about having an emergency fund, paying off your debt or your student loans, budgeting, which what I had just mentioned earlier. It talks about finances, taxes, buying a home. And so you guys should really check this out. if you want to learn more about just the basics of personal finance. It even talked about investing over there and what different accounts you can open for investing. So after you get that basic of that personal finance knowledge, know what your investment options are. So that's number 4. And there's a lot of different investments that you can do. So when we talk about investing, it means that you're putting money for something that you believe would give you more money in the future. So you could either do stock market, you could do real estate, you could do investing in businesses or startups. For the purpose of this episode, I want to talk about stock market investing because this is something that I think if you're working full time is something that you could do already without that active, investing work. Now, if you are working a W-2 or if you're a full-time nurse right now, if you have an employer sponsored account, which what we call a 401k or a 403b, then technically you're already an investor. You're already investing because the money that is being taken away from your paycheck for retirement is already invested in the stock market. With that said, you have to know your 401k. And I know that when we get into jobs, our goal is to just make money and do our job as nurses. But knowing your 401k, knowing where it's invested is really important because that is your money. Know if your money is being invested in a specific asset and know if your employer is matching your retirement. That's really important. What that just means is that whatever money you put in for retirement, your employer is matching that money. So that is essentially kind of like free money on the table for you. Know if you have to ask your HR if this is something that they do. Number 6 is learning other investment accounts. Now that you know that you're investing in the 401k, you can definitely open other investment accounts like a Roth IRA. And getting educated about this is another thing. But essentially, investment accounts all differ based on tax implications, based on some contribution limits, based on some rules. So get to know this different investment accounts and see what may work out for you. After you learn about investment accounts, it's time to learn what investments you have to put in these accounts. And I know a lot of people like have or make that mistake. I've actually seen it so much in the last 4 years that I have been teaching about investing that a lot of people actually open up this investment accounts and they put their money in there and then they just leave it. You have to pick investments for your money to actually grow, right? So, one of my favorite investments and something that I actually love to teach about with my students or in my audience is index funds. So, index funds are great investments to have because they're diversified in a sense that it is really a collection of stocks and bonds and it lets you invest passively. What that just means is that you don't need to research, you don't need to specifically pick stocks. And this lets you really enjoy your time off work without even actively managing your portfolios. After that, you have to keep on educating yourself and invest consistently and for long term. So, that is how you really get started with investing. And a lot of times these things are changing every year. And so you have to consistently educate yourself. It's kind of the same thing as working in healthcare. Things change. So you have to kind of adapt to it. So it's not one of those things that you set it and forget it. Although, in a sense, you could do that. But at the same time, you want to make sure that you know how to manage your portfolios. I always say that in order to become a confident investor, you have to really have the courage first to get started because confidence is not something that you learn or have right away. It requires consistent, work and also getting started. So I really encourage you to get your money to start working for you. And if you want to learn more how to invest your money, I also teach this in my platform. My name is Nurse Who Invests. And Nurse.org has a lot of great articles on money, finance, investing tips. So you guys should check that out. Hopefully that this episode is helpful for you, and hopefully it's something that you would implement after you listen to this episode, because it's one thing to learn about all of this and actually put in the action and get started with investing.
Thanks for joining Nurse Converse, brought to you by Nurse.org. Help us grow by leaving a 5-star rating and review on your favorite podcast platform. Nurse.org supports nurses with career and education tips, life advice, and breaking news. Thank you for all you do and for being you.